Yes, sir. Earlier it was good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but why now? Okay, maybe 1 minute, 1 minute. So is it now okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So let me share it once again. Okay, so the slides are visible, right?
Yes.
Recording, fine. Okay, so what is biomedical engineering? Any idea?
Sir, it is application of technology for healthcare.
Yeah. So essentially, it's a yeah. In very general sense, it's basically how to apply the technology for medical, basically medical purpose or healthcare purpose, right? So there are many ingredients of this particular biomedical engineering. It's an interdisciplinary area, right? So it involves physics, chemistry, biology, math, business models, right? So commercializing the product, right? Ethics, right? That is also very important. So there are many different types of things coming into play together to make something which is useful for what do you call it as for a medical purpose or for health related purpose, right? So just telling this may not give you a complete idea about what is that. So I will try to give an example with which we can try to get a glimpse of what is biomedical engineering, and then we will go on with this slide. So let me take a whiteboard. So you can see the whiteboard, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah. So what is a pulse oximeter? What is a pulse oximeter? I mean, I can very safely ask you, I mean, because these days, almost every home has one piece of pulse oximeter, right? What is that?
It is used to calculate the oxygen level in our
Oxygen
body.
level in the blood, right?
Yes.
Right. So basically, it consists of an LED, right? Light emitting diode, which is called LED. It puts some light to the finger. The reflected or the transmitted light is being picked up by a photo detector, right? And the output of this is basically light intensity. And from this, we can deduce what is called the oxygen saturation. Right? Now, what is oxygen saturation? So the blood contains RBC, red blood cells, right? So this red blood cells has oxyhemoglobin and deoxyhemoglobin, right? So the idea is that the lungs, when the blood is pumped through the lungs, the oxygen that the oxygen that we inhale will be transferred from the lungs to the blood. Now, how do you transfer it? So the oxygen molecule has to somehow stick to the RBC, right? That is taken care by this hemoglobin. So they are the carriers of oxygen. So the oxygen will get stick to this oxygen deoxyhemoglobin, basically oxygenated hemoglobin and deoxygenated. That means there is no oxygen present. So it actually hemoglobin acts as the carrier, and the blood will be pumped by the heart so that this oxygen will be transported throughout the whole circulation system in the body, and this oxygen will be delivered to the cells, and the cell will use this oxygen for oxidation reactions, basically to produce energy, right? This oxygen will react with the nutrients to produce energy, carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide is excelled, energy is utilized, right? That's how it works. Now the question is, when somebody gets COVID or someone's health lung is affected, essentially the oxygen that is being produced in the lungs will be very less, right? So the amount of oxygen present in the blood will also be proportionally smaller. So if you can measure the oxygen concentration or the amount of oxygen present in the blood, which is quantified as oxygen saturation, we will rigorously see what is this in the tutorial, but we are not going to look at it right now. So this just tells you that how much oxygen is present in the blood. So if you can measure this, it can directly tell you the status of lungs, right? And that's why this is very important for COVID treatment, because COVID, the diagnosis of COVID, one of the way to diagnose the COVID is by looking at the lungs, because this COVID virus attacked the lungs directly. So that's how we can actually, monitor the situation, right? So oxygen saturation should be around 98, 99. If it goes below 95, it's a warning. If it is around 90, you should be hospitalized. I mean, that's how the clinical thing says, right? So basically, you need oxygen support, right? So anyway, so now this is a very nice example. It's a very small device. You know what is the size of this device with respect to this finger? You can actually insert this. It is covered like this, right? It's a very small device, right? And it can actually save your life. See, just imagine what is this. And this particular device contains many aspects to its design. So that's what we are going to look at. So it has got what is called the physiology, right? Physiology and the physics. The physiology and physics part. Then it has got what? The biology part. Like what I was actually explaining these things right now. Like what is it aiming for? And what is the basic mechanism? We'll come to it. Then it has got some engineering part, because we have to build it. This device has to be built. It has to be designed properly, right? And then it has got a math. I will tell you what is that. Then it has got a clinical part. I would say, that's fine. So clinical one, because it has to be employed in clinics. It has to be validated by clinicians so that we can use it for decision making, right? With respect to diagnosis or treatment. It's very important. Otherwise, it's useless, all these efforts. And then the commercial, right? Commercial part. So this involves ethics as well. Or you can put it separately, right? So there are several aspects to this small device, and in fact, for any device, any biomedical device, right? And commercial contains all IPR, that means patents, intellectual property, and all those things. Those things we don't care. We look at this part, right? But anyway, these are the different aspects of, and again, commercial have ergonomics, right? Design criteria, how user friendly it is. All these things do matter. Now, you have to view this biomedical engineering from all these perspectives. You cannot stop. If you start with a problem here, you have to, you are supposed to, you don't have to always, you are supposed to reach to the point, or with the help of, not single-handedly, with the help of a team. If you can reach up to this point, then that becomes really fruitful. That means you start up from what is called a proof of concept, right? You have got an idea, and from that, you start moving with the help of all these informations to clinical trial, then to the commercial, with the help of all sort of IPR, whatever that things that you have to put. And finally, you will get a nice product which can be sold, right? And forget the profit or anything. It can be useful for the society, right? If you can make a very cost-effective instrument, this can be actually very useful for it. Just like pulse oximeter. See how small this device is. It hardly costs you around 1,000 rupees. 1,000 rupees is a big amount of money for many people. Majority of the people in the country agree, but still, it is not. You don't have to buy it often. If once you buy it, it's actually going to protect your life, right? Especially in this COVID time. So you have seen the importance of this, right? So this is how this instrument development or the biomedical concepts that we can view. But what I want to stress is, let's look at this particular problem of pulse oximeter. I just want to show the interplay between different disciplines like biology, physics, engineering, maths in this particular pulse oximeter. That's my intention. So let's look at that part. So somebody decided to do one thing. See, look, I want to look at the oxygen saturation, or I want to look at the blood. So basically, I want to look at one of the physiological parameters. Either it can be from the blood, or it can be blood pressure, or it can be bone density, something. But I want to use light, right? So the first question they asked is, can we use light to monitor the body? Right? So they have reasons for asking this. You have to look at the history, right? So why light? These are the questions that they are asked. So somebody asked, so why don't we use the light? Then someone else will ask, why do you want to use the light? Why not ultrasound? Why not, any other X-ray that was invented before that, right? So this was actually this was invented in around 1970s, I guess, right? So there are so many questions that we can ask. So fundamentally, we are asking why can we use light to monitor the body? So first question, and this contains both physics and physiology. Because we are using the light, the principles comes from the physics, and this light has to interact with your tissue. And this tissue is basically a biological specimen. We are going to measure something related to your physiology, because blood flow is related to your whole physiology. So these two are the stakeholders in this particular question, right? Now, suppose this is yes. I mean, theoretically or conceptually, somebody decided, okay, I am convinced that this is an yes. Then what will be the next step? Anyone? Hello? Hello? Are you guys hearing me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what will be the next step? Just things. I mean, suppose somebody is decided that, okay, I'm going to use the light. What will be the next step?
Deciding how to use it.
How to use them?
Yeah. So you will just make one, right? We will see whether, okay, is the LED available right now, or is a detector is available. So if you know the available things there, then you will try to make one, right? So that's exactly what they do in engineering, right? So there comes the so many questions. So say, for example, if I going to put a light here, should I put the detector here? Should I put the detector here? How close I should put it? What sort of LED I should use? What detector I should use? So all these questions have to be answered. How to arrange it? What signal process? What sort of data acquisition I should use? How do you take this intensity? Should I use an amplifier here? Right? All these things have to be answered. So like a power supply to LED, which one I have to use? What power I have to use? What wavelength I have to use? All these questions have to be answered, and there is an interplay between physics and engineering to answer all these questions. Then only comes the point where we can actually start measuring something. Again, coming back to physiology, right? The basic question is asked with the help of physics and physiology. Then you start with the help of physics and engineering, make a device, right? Then you will get some measurements, right? Now the question is this measurement making sense to you? Say suppose you are looking at the oxygen saturation. What do you mean by oxygen saturation? What things these measurements are sensitive, right? Those things you have to again find out. For that matter, you need this part. The question is, what happens to light in tissue? So again, this is a same question here. And there is an interplay between physics and biology. Now again, there is a problem. What happens to light in the tissue? So you have to see what are the parameters in the biological specimen or the finger which is going to interact with the light, that you have to find out, right? So here you can see that there are certain, so what happens? Suppose I take a beaker of water and put a laser pointer to this. What will happen to the beam? What will happen to the beam? Suppose I take a beaker of water.
It will refract.
It will refract slightly, and then more or less it will go in a straight line, right?
Yes.
If it is a clear water. But what happens if I put a beaker of milk?
Angel effect.
Sorry? Will it go in a straight line?
No, it will scatter.
It will scatter. It will get scattered. It will get absorbed. Right? It may not reach this point. Maybe it will reach with very less intensity. Right? So it will get scattered. It will get absorbed. It will get scattered. Right? So this is what is called the turbid media. That means the light is getting absorbed and scattered, just like a cloud or a misty day, where the light is getting scattered and absorbed, right? You might have observed it when you drive or you look at the sunlight through a cloud, right? Just like what we do in a beaker of milk. And that same thing happens in tissue. Tissue is a turbid media for light. For light, this is important. For light, tissue is a turbid media. That means when light passes through the tissue, it scatters and gets absorbed. And who is doing these things? So physics has answered me, there is absorption and there is scattering because it's a turbid media. But who is doing this job in a physiological setting or in a biological specimen? Tissue. So it contains, in fact, certain chromophores. They call it chromophores, like melanin, which gives you the tint texture. Then there are water present in it. There are many. I am just citing important ones. Then we have got this oxy and deoxyhemoglobin in the RBC. Right? So we are interested in this part. So what happens is when the light is put into the tissue, this light is scattered by many of these components. But if you choose a proper wavelength lamp, if you choose a proper wavelength, we choose a proper wavelength of the LED. Say, for example, the wavelength that people use for pulse oximeter is around 630 nanometer. This is called the near infrared region, near infrared wave, NIR. So if you use this particular wavelength, people have found that the interaction of oxy and deoxyhemoglobin will dictate how this particular light behave in the tissue. That means the absorption and the scattering is predominantly determined by oxy and deoxyhemoglobin content. See, this information is again a blending of biology, chemistry, and physics, right? And with this information, now we can say that if I use 630 nanometer at a given with a given power, then I am going to get an output intensity so I'm going to get an output intensity which is going to be sensitive to oxy and deoxyhemoglobin content. That means, suppose the oxy and deoxyhemoglobin content fluctuates due to some reason. That means, suppose the lungs is not working properly. That means the oxygenation is not happening properly. Then the oxy and deoxyhemoglobin concentration fluctuates. If the oxy and deoxyhemoglobin concentration fluctuates, the intensity fluctuates. So from those fluctuations, I can find out what is the concentration of oxy and deoxyhemoglobin, from which indirectly I can relate it to the lung capacity. Right? So these are things like what are the basic mechanisms with which we are trying to answer this question, the first point, right? That is what coming over here. And again, you have to think about, okay, coming back, I have to use this lambda. What should be my power? Can I use wattage? No, because it will burn your skin. So it should be somewhere around millivolts. So roughly around 3 to 10 milliwatt is what is allowed in human skin, right? All these questions can be answered. Now let's skip the math. Let's come to clinic. So once you make this measurement and you found that there is some sensitivity to this one, but now you have to have a clinical validation. So when I say this is oxygen saturation, is there any other way with which I can actually confirm that this is actually oxygen saturation? So how do you calibrate it? Right? That you have to say, right? And then you have to test it for many people and see whether it's capable of finding the lung function. Can you actually relate it to the lung function? Or whatever. I mean, it need not be lung function, but I mean, what are the objectives? Actually, is it meeting the objectives with a lot of clinical trials? Right? Then that itself is a clinical validation itself is a very strenuous procedure. It has got a lot of documentation, a lot of managerial stuff, and as well as a lot of statistical analysis. And we have to develop a protocol, all those things. It's actually a completely different ball game. Right? Most often we feel that proof of concept is very easy. Translating the proof of concept to this part is the most challenging one. And then comes the commercial aspects. This is, again, you know, how difficult it is. You may have an idea about, you might have read many articles on how people commercialize this type of these things, right? So that's something that you can have you can think about, right? Now this math. So max is also very important here. See, for example, the type of questions, they can ask many type of questions. So for example, how to translate this light intensity to oxygen saturation requires some amount of math, some elementary math. But that's not something that I am talking about with the math here. Of course, any quantifications require some math, some formula. That's not how we have to deal with this particular thing. So essentially, what does math here means? The questions that they ask is, so for example, I said this oxyhemoglobin concentrations are creating this intensity fluctuation. So the type of questions they ask is, how do you prove that this oxyhemoglobin is actually creating the light intensity? How do you prove it rigorously? Given how the light interacts with the tissue. So how light interacts with the tissue, you need a model, a mathematical model. Now from which we have to prove that basically these interactions are actually creating the light intensity. So for example, can we say that two different types of oxyhemoglobin changes can create the same light intensity fluctuation? Then there will be a problem. So then from that light intensity measurement, you won't be able to differentiate what sort of changes which created it, right? So say for example, if oxyhemoglobin concentration is A and you give you a measurement M, oxyhemoglobin concentration now changes to B, but it also gives you the same measurement M. So from this M, you won't be able to find out which one actually created it. These are called uniqueness issues. So these are not very easy stuff. It requires a lot of maths problems. So mathematics look at this in a way they call it as inverse problems, and it's a very big domain with a lot of people working in it. So inverse problems cover a lot of medical imaging or this type of measurement concepts in a different settings. They have their own common theories and all those stuff with which we can look at different types of imaging problems. So I will give a glimpse of what does it mean because it's a very nice idea to look at the different types of imaging problems. So I will come to this at some point in a very, qualitative way. But what I want to stress is math also have a very big footing in this area, mathematics people, right? So now, one thing that you will agree is that although I compartmentalized these particular disciplines, there is nothing like a very rigid compartments. As you might have already noticed, there are always cross interactions with these compartments, right? So essentially, these type of problems have to be looked as a problem, not as a problem in a given discipline. My aim is to use the light to look at the physiology. it doesn't matter from where I am taking the information, whether it's physics or biology textbooks or engineering or maths, clinic, doesn't matter. You make it working in a rigorous fashion. That should be the goal. So if you are going to decide your career in a topic like this, you are going to face this problem. What should I learn? I mean, so many information from different disciplines. So which one I should learn? Right. So these are the questions that you have to ask, and you have to basically convince yourself that you have to have knowledge from different fields. You can be an expert in one of them, but you cannot ignore all of them, all other. That way you cannot survive. You have to be expert in one, but you should have a glimpse of other things as well. With proper collaborations, you can move forward, right? Anyway, for you it's a far-fetched thing. You are just starting your bachelor's, but important thing that I would like you to say is, irrespective of what is your branch of engineering, whether it's civil, electrical, chemical, whatever, there are certain common concepts that you are going to learn, which you will see that your friend is also, being an electrical engineer, you will see that the computer science guy is also learning the same stuff. Mechanical engineering guy is also learning the same stuff, right? So that those concepts are so important that those concepts can come in any discipline. It can come in chemistry, in biology, even in humanities, arts, right? So those common concepts are so common, say for example, as per the word meaning, that it comes in different disciplines, and we will try to see what are those common elements in the engineering, and try to relate it to the biomedical stuff. That's what I am going to do. So it's basically a very qualitative module. We cannot go into the math or into physics or anything. I will just try to give you some concept that you will definitely be encountering in your 4 years stay. And when you learn it in a different context, you will be able to remember what I taught you. I hope so. So that you can relate it to the biomedical engineering or biology, whatever. Right? That's the purpose of this course. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, so coming back, you can see the slide, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So coming back, so these four, whatever I told you, this is what we have just explained with respect to this pulse oximeter, right? So let's skip it, so you got some idea. Now, two things that I want to tell you, I have already explained this to you, is this bio-inspired engineering and engineering-inspired biology. That means basically it's not like we always like, okay, I have got a bio problem, I'm going to build this thing. So we need to apply the engineering skills to solve a bio problem. It's not always in a one way. It's basically two way. So there are cases where we get inspired by the biology or from the nature, and we try to make engineering systems. There are so many examples for this. And the other way around, we can actually look at the engineering principles and try to mimic it in the biology, the synthetic biology and all those stuff. So there are so many examples for these two. It will tell you how these two interplay each other, help each other to grow, right? So that see, this is something which you may not realize. Maybe I have realized in my career a little bit. My seniors have realized it in a much, in a really bad way. So there was a big resistance in the IITs to start a bio department. I mean, I'm talking about something 20, 25 years ago, maybe. Right? So people have struggled. People have actually did a lot of fight to start the bio department. So the question is, why do you need a bio department in an IIT? So these are the questions from which all these things evolved. Now you can see many IITs are starting their own hospitals. IISc is going to start an hospital, right? Animal houses are an integral part of any bio departments, and animal houses are an integral part of any IITs nowadays. bioengineering and all those stuff, right? So things have changed. They found that there is no boundaries are thinning. I mean, so that way you have to see these problems. So this bio-inspired engineering, I don't want to spend more time on this. I will just give a couple of examples, and then you can just Google search. You will find a lot of examples on this bio-inspired engineering or engineering-inspired biology. So you know the history of evolution of these flights, right? Aeroplanes, how they designed it. So they were trying to actually mimic the birds. It's called biomimicking. So essentially, they were trying to the earlier designs were basically trying to mimic how the bird flies and all those stuff, right? And then evolved it into what we see as a new aeroplane with aerodynamic structures and all those things. Similarly, this lotus leaf, it contains a coating so that the water will not get sticked. So if there is a mud and if it rains, then it can just wash out all the mud. So it will be clean. So they asked, okay, shall we make a coating like this in the glass, in the window pane? So if that is the case, it's like a self-cleaning glass. You don't have to clean it. Just water it, the water will take the dust along with it, right? So that's another inspired one. So this is what this car is basically a box fiction inspired design, right? So there are so many. Like, this is something which I really like. These birds hitting the glass. So because of these big towers which is covered with the glass. So that's a very this buildings with covered glass is a design which is actually good for cold places. For hot places like India, it actually increases the greenhouse effect, and it's really bad. I mean, we have to basically put the air conditioner on for more time, but still we just mimic it. It's a bad way of mimicking from the West. But if for such buildings, if we have here, essentially one big problem, nature's problem is these birds hitting it, because when they see the glass, depending on the lighting inside the room, the reflection of the glass can actually reveal something else outside. It can be a tree or some park, so that the bird will just go and hit it. So if you want to reduce it, basically you have to reduce the reflection coefficient of the glass. So another way is what they have observed is this spider net. This spider net has got a UV coating in the net. So what happens is for human beings, UV is not visible. So our eyes are tuned for visible spectrum. Whereas for the birds, UV light are sensitive. So birds can actually see this net. So they won't go and hit the web. So, I mean, spider is not preparing this web to catch the bird, right? It's for small insects. So it has to avoid the collision with the bird, right? So basically they use this technology, I mean, as a part of evolution. But for us, we can actually do a UV coating in the glass so that you can basically avoid birds colliding it and getting killed, right? This is something which we inspired by the nature to protect the nature. That way you can view it. So now these branches of biomedical engineering, you can see several branches of biomedical engineering here. I don't want to even name them, like biomechanics, biosensor, prosthetics, medical imaging. Now the question is, how do you learn all this stuff? That too in a six lectures. Forget the 6 lectures, even in one semester, not possible. So basically you have to have a BME, BTech. If you have a BME, BTech, we can manage. But who is taking BME, BTech? Is one faculty who is taking BME, BTech? No, one department is taking BME, BTech, right? So you need you need several people to take a course in BME, essentially to cover all or most of these topics, where their expertise lies in 1 or 2 of these things. Then only you can actually cover this. A single person cannot cover any of these things, how much time they give. Even if I get this 1 year to cover this, I won't be able to cover. The reason is simple. I don't know many of these things. I don't have any idea what is tissue engineering is. So my expertise lies in a couple of them. So say for example, even if it is a couple of them, there is, say for example, can you tell me what are the medical imaging modalities that you know? What all imaging systems that you have seen in a hospital?
MRI,
MRI,
CT scan,
CT,
2D echo.
Sorry?
2D echo.
2D echo ultrasound.
X-ray.
Sonography.
Huh? Yes. Which one?
Sonography.
Huh?
Sir, ultrasound, sir.
Ultrasounds, yeah. So he's a 2D echo. Echo is basically ultrasound, yeah.
X-ray.
X-ray. So this is basically computer tomography, which is X-ray, yeah. PET scan, positron emission. Then light-based, several of them. NIR spectroscopy, like pulse oximeter. This is basically pulse oximeter. Photoacoustics. It's a hybrid method with light and ultrasound. Right, so OCT, optical coherence tomography, they use it for eye. Several of them comes, right? Now, suppose when you go to a hospital, there will be radiologists who are you are trained only for one particular modality. Say, for example, MRI, it can be CT. Even in CT, there are dental CTs which are trained separately, right? And then ultrasound specialists will be there. So there will be experts for each of them. And if you look at the academy or the research domain, each of these imaging modalities will be covered by single. So, I mean, one individual will be dedicating most of their professional career in one of these imaging modalities. They cannot cover all of them. So one person who is working MRI, most often his career will be on MRI, which of course with some overlaps, but mostly on MRI, right? Now, even in MRI, there will be neuro-related MRI. There can be gastro-related separately, right? Sports injury-based MRI can be separate technician with separate specialization. So there are sub-specialization in all these things. So you can just imagine, even for medical imaging, when I say somebody asks me what is my area, I'm a bit reluctant to say I work in medical imaging, because if I say medical imaging, they will start asking me something from PET scan, which I don't know. I mean, I can pick up something, of course, if I want. But I don't know. I mean, if you just ask, if you ask me from light, yes, I can up to a certain extent. Right. So the knowledge is vast and we don't have infinite time to learn all this stuff. How do you learn this stuff? How can you work like that with all this stuff? So it's a huge information. Right. So this is something that you have to keep in mind when you say biomedical engineering. And one way to I can teach you is to throw many things which I can do. I can just look at what is biomechanics, put something in the slide, and then go to clinic, put something, go to rehabilitation, put some pictures, and then make a buffet sort of stuff, and then most information I can just throw it to you. It doesn't make any sense, right? So essentially, that's not going to work like that. So teaching is very difficult. Learning is also difficult equally. So we have to see what we can do in this course. Because it's basically a mixture of many concepts. So essentially what I'm going to do is to cover medical imaging little bit and biomedical instrumentation with a common concepts. Some concepts that I'm sure that you will be encountering irrespective of your engineering branch. So that when you learn that in your courses, you will be able to connect that to the biomedical engineering in general. That's the idea that I'm going to use. Let's see how it goes. So let's start with what is called stability. So this is something which is very important in human body. So human body, see, for example, human body is covered with skin. Why is it so? Why are our skeleton, our internal organs not exposed? Any idea?
So that they don't get damaged.
Why do you think that when it get exposed, it get damaged? Nobody is there to hit you, right? I mean, nothing. So why should it get damaged?
Maybe due to viral infections like bacteria.
Yeah. So in fact, it will get damaged because there are in fact things which can cause harm to it, right? Which is something which you cannot see with the eye, maybe, right? So there are the virus, bacteria can affect you. So there is so essentially, what does it mean? Essentially, it means that you are not in a very safe environment. You have to protect yourself. Your body, you means your body. Your body needs protection. And why do you need to get protected? Because you are basically trying to survive. That's an inherent coded in somewhere in the brain. So everything will be fine-tuned as a part of evolution so that you will be a protected species, so that you can survive till you die, of course. You have to survive as much as you can, right? So that's how the body is being fine-tuned. This is about stability. You don't want your organs to get damaged by the virus. You need to maintain certain optimal parameters in the body. The blood has to flow in this much with this much pressure. It has to maintain a body temperature of 36 degrees centigrade. Your blood should not have this much of glucose, right? So your heart should be pumping at this rate. Your pulse rate should be this much. So there are certain vital parameters which is optimally maintained in the body, with which your body is working fine so that you can survive, right? That is the stability of the body. And this stability is also very important in engineering, right? So when you design a flight which has to fly in the air, it has to be stable in the air, right? And in the air, if you look at the 30,000 feet above the ground, there's a lot of turbulence. The weather is very bad. Wind can flow in any directions, right? It's a very chaotic environment up in the air, and then you are flying a machine. I mean, just imagine what is the challenge, right? The birds, what they do maneuvering, right? When it flies, when the wind blows, they change their body directions, their wing, everything. They do a lot of maneuvering to make it stable. So stability is very important for everything, for a human being, for a robot, for a flying machine or whatever, for aeroplanes, the ship, because the atmosphere is always dynamic. The environment where we live is always dynamic. Things keep on changing. There is no static stuff. So we have to adapt to that environment so that we can stabilize ourselves to just survive in that environment. That is very important. So stability is important. Stability of a building during earthquake. So Japanese have developed a lot of stabilizing things to make sure that the building, even if it is an earthquake, it will not collapse. The stability requirement are different, right? So this is going to be a very important problem. We call it stability or whatever, stable systems in engineering, but in biology or in physiological systems, they call it as homeostasis. So the idea is the whole body organs work together to make the whole body stable, right? So for example, if the blood sugar level increases, the liver has to work, pancreas and the liver has to work to maintain its glucose level properly. Right? We will see that examples a little bit, right? So the whole body is supposed to work together to make the stability of the body. So now, how to make stable thing? How to achieve stability, or under what conditions stability is lost? Is stability is the only criteria that you have to look at? Is unstable systems good or bad? So there are several questions that you have to ask. So we are going to look at two examples with which some of these questions can be answered. So if you look at this first figure, you can see that there are predators here. So there are predators here and there are prey here, right? So what happens if the predator population increases? So what happens if the predator, the fox, or what I think is fox, population increases? What happens to prey?
More. Yeah, they will die.
They will die. So their population will decrease, right? So if the prey population decreases, what will happen to predator population?
They will also starve and die.
Exactly. Because assuming that this is the only food that is available, this predator will start depleting because they don't have enough food. Their population comes down. But if their population comes down, what will happen to the prey population? If the predator population comes down, what will happen to prey population?
Population will increase.
It will increase, right? Because there are not enough predators, so they can live happily. So the population will increase. But then if it increases, what will happen to the predator population?
It will increase.
It will increase, right? But then you can see it as a loop where there is a stabilization that is happening. So if I plot it, say for example, if I plot the predator concentration, the population and prey. So if this increases, what happens to this? Decreases, right? But then it will come decreases, this will increase. So you can see that it's like it settles to a stable state. So you can see that at a given point of time, there will be small fluctuations. It will keep on fluctuating, but more or less it settles to a stable state, right? So this concept is called negative feedback. And this is something which you are definitely going to encounter in first few years of your BTech, irrespective of the branch, for sure, in signal processing or in control systems, some of them, some basic electrical related courses, you are going to encounter this. Especially the electrical and mechanical people will never be able to avoid it. I mean, they will definitely be seeing this. So the concept is like this. Whenever the population is increasing, the prey population decreases, which in turn actually make sure that the population of the predator is also made less. So this is the feedback that is happening. Any increase here will reach to an event where that increment is being arrested. That is called a negative feedback. So there is an uncontrolled increase in this population will eventually lead through this path a case where this uncontrolled evolution is being arrested, because now it has to come down. If this guy came out because of a large number of prey, but then you can see that when it comes down, maybe this guy is too weak and it's died, so it will end up in 1 or 2. That way you can think, right? So similarly, the other way around, it can also be the other way around. So if it is reducing, it decreases. But if it is increasing, this can increase. See? So it is in both directions. If the population is decreasing, it will try to oppose. If the population is, if it is population is increasing, it will try to oppose. But if you look it from this corner, if the population is decreasing, this event will make it try to oppose it, so that it will become large population. So it is in both directions.
Sir, this can lead to extinction also, right?
Extinction, yeah. I mean, what way? Can you explain? I don't know.
Sir, if they eat all the prey.
Sorry?
Sir, if they eat all the prey, then...
Yeah. I mean, okay. You mean to say if this negative feedback doesn't exist? If this feedback doesn't exist, then it can actually cause extinction. Yes. So these are the models with which we can actually look at the extinction. I mean, this is a very simple model. This is not how it works, right? This guy has got different other organs, and the only predator for this prey is not this guy. There are human interventions. There are other animals. There is environmental issues that affects this. There are certain diseases that is affecting it. It's not an individual stuff. So many are there. It's a very complicated stuff. It's a very simple block diagram to explain this. If you really want to model it, it will be much more complicated, right? So this is the concept of negative feedback. Now the question is, so it is mostly negative feedback is actually leading you to a stable system, right? So in you will be learning what are called amplifiers in electronics. So basically, these amplifiers are mostly are in fact designed based on negative feedback to get a very stable output. You will see that I'm not going to. Maybe I will cover something in the tutorial, but I mean you will learn this in a very detailed way with the experts in your department. So it's better you learn from them. Now, for this concept for negative feedback, I mean, as it leads to stability, you can also look at what are called the unstable systems. As I told you, if there is a stable system, there can be unstable systems, right? If I cut one of these branch, basically it's an unstable system. As somebody was pointing out, if the predator population increases, this prey population will decrease, and in fact, both can lead to it. This is just a pair where both of these guys depends only on food for this from this prey, essentially if this all these things die, these guys will also die. So it's called interdependence, right? In social science you might have learned interdependence. These guys depends on this guy as well, right? So I mean you can find how these guys are dependent on them as well, right? So if the predator population increases uncontrolled way, all the prey will die out, and that can lead to the death of extinction of these guys as well. So this will stabilize so that all of them can actually live in a optimal way. That's the idea of stable system. Sorry, stable system. Now, for an unstable system, basically there is what is called a positive feedback. So let's put this example. Suppose you started a company, and you are so intelligent that your company started losing money. It started in loss. Then what will you do? As I told you, you are intelligent. Then what will you do? You will cut the salary of your employees. You will cut their perks. You will start firing some of them. So you will make the environment so bad that the productivity of the employee will go down, right? And that will create this drop in sales, which will again create more problems to your company. When more problems come, you will again behave the same way. You will start cutting more salary, more employees will be fired, and this will finally take you to shutting down your company, right? So it's a very unstable system. You are going to lose the business if you keep this attitude, right? So it's called the positive feedback. So, but then if you want to actually change, make it to a stable system, what you have to do is, irrespective of your financial pressures, do not try it to trickle down to your employee. Try to shield your employees. Try not to cut their salary. Try to motivate them and increase your sales so that you can somehow, maybe after a few dynamics, you may be able to actually come out of the financial pressure. That's a different attitude. So, okay, it's a very negative connotation. Positive attitude leads to an unstable system. So don't take it in that literary sense. So essentially, this is how you have to view this, right? Now, but then don't take it in a way that this positive feedbacks or instability are really bad. That is not true. So both the negative feedback and the positive feedbacks are necessary for both the engineering systems as well as the biomedical systems. For engineering systems, say for example, oscillators. What is an oscillator? It actually generates signals. It generates sine waves, it generates square waves, it generates triangular waves, whatever. These oscillators are actually essential, you know that. Otherwise, your telephone communication system, mobile, nothing will work. There won't be any television, there won't be any broadcasting, nothing. Right? So oscillators are the heart of all these communication systems. And of course, amplifiers are also the same. So these guys are very important for both engineering system. And you will see that negative feedback is there in the physiological systems, and positive feedback is also there in the physiological systems. That is also very crucial in physiological systems or biosystems, right? So both are important, and we are going to see some examples, very qualitative examples. Any questions?
Sir, why is it called positive feedback?
Positive in the sense that, see here, say for example, let's put it, maybe you won't get a picture. Suppose the population in the predator is increasing, right? Then the prey population will decrease. Suppose this feedback is in such a way that when the prey population decreases, the predator population is also increasing. Just assume that. Then what happens? An increase in the population in the predator will give you a dynamics where the predator increase in the predator population is supported. So that means an unwanted increase in the population is creating more unwanted increase in the predator. Same thing here. And do you want your business to go bad? No. But your finance is going bad. Your finance is going bad means you are creating a situation by cutting down the employee that your finance is again going bad. That means a loss initiates further
compounding.
loss. Huh? Compounding,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, thanks for that word. So basically compounding, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, same thing here. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. So now we will see what is homeostasis in terms of little bit on the physiology part. So I'll just quickly tell you what is this, what are these things, and we will come back at some point in the second part of the course. So as you know, this homeostasis is something, the stability of the human body. And the human body, the organs are all building blocks are basically the cells, right? So it's better we start from the cell, what is happening. So cell is basically this small few micrometer entity, which has got a cell membrane. It again protects its environment. See, there are protections. Everything is not free. There is a gate here. I call it a gate. The cell membrane. This gate will not allow things to just pass. It will decide who is going to pass, who is not going to pass. There are materials ready here to pass to. Inside that cell, there are things that wants to come out of the cell, and the gate controls everything. There is a nucleus, and all the energy, everything is being produced here. So the basic building blocks, how as a human body works, is based on the cells at the cellular level, right? This is what we have, the nucleus and all those stuff. We will cover some qualitative aspects of these things in the second part of the course. Right now, what I want to tell you is essentially how this homeostasis is happening at the cellular level when the cells combines to form organs, and how the organs actually keep a tab on your health. So if you go to this particular picture here, you can see the circulation system. So you can see that the heart has got two pumps, left and the right side, right? So what happens is the heart will pump blood to the lungs and get it oxygenated. So when heart pumps the blood to the lungs, the blood will get oxygen from what we have inhaled. That will be passed from the lungs to the blood, and that blood will be pumped back to the heart. That particular blood will be pumped by the heart to the circulation system. So it has got two pumps. One is pushed to the lungs, and from there it will get oxygen, and when it comes back, it will be pumped to the main body. This is called the aorta, and the aorta will take it to the arteries, and arteries will take it to the arterioles. We'll come back to this at some point, so don't worry about it right now. So it will come to the arterioles and the capillaries. So here lies the cell. So you can consider there are many cells inside in this vicinity. So there are so many capillaries near to the cells. So the heart will pump the blood, and the blood will be coming to the capillaries. Near to the capillaries, there are the cells. So near to the cells, there are many capillaries which will feed the cells the nutrients that it needs. And what are the nutrients? Basically, the nutrients are collected from the guts, which is the gastrointestinal tract. From the food, they take what are the carbohydrates, fat, and proteins, right? These three things will be absorbed by the blood, and that will reaches to the capillary, and from the capillary, the cells will start absorbing this in the form of carbohydrates will become glucose, fats will become fatty acids, and proteins will become amino acids, right? And these three guys will start penetrating the cell membrane. So these three things will start penetrating the cell membrane. Oxygen from the lungs, oxygen from the blood, which reaches the capillaries here. So there are so many capillaries here. Those oxygen will also start diffusing inside this, and then oxygen plus these nutrients that is coming from here, these three nutrients will give me energy plus carbon dioxide plus water, right? So this is how the basic working of the system. Now you can see that there are so many things that is happening. The blood contains so many unwanted stuff. So the carbon dioxide from this oxidation reaction has to be collected back and it has to be expelled, right? And there are so many other foreign particles that has to be filtered out by the kidney. So all these cells which formed cells combines to form organs, and organs work together in a what is a concerted efforts are put by all these organs to make the stability of the system. If one of the things fails, you will get disease, right? So for example, let's look at this disease again in a very block diagram approach. So if you look at this particular block diagram, you can see that suppose the blood glucose level in your body, let's put it like this. Suppose the blood glucose in your body level increases. So when the blood glucose level increases, the pancreas will sense it. See, it will sense it. And then what will happen is, if the pancreas cells sense that their glucose level is increased, the insulin is released. It's called actuation. Insulin is released. And when the insulin is released, glucose is absorbed and stored as glycogen, because insulin will ensure that the glucose is converted into glycogen, which is stored in the liver. So that what will happen? So glucose from the blood is now removed by the insulin, so that the glucose level will come down. So what happened here in this side, the glucose has increased, but by this mechanism, the glucose increase in the glucose concentration is reduced. So basically, this is a negative feedback, right? So any increase in the blood glucose level is arrested by this particular increase is being arrested. It tries to oppose this increase and effectively try to reduce it, so that the more or less a stable glucose level is maintained, provided all these functions happen properly. If it doesn't happen properly, then we have the diabetes, right? Similarly, suppose the blood glucose level decrease. The blood glucose level decrease, then this branch works. Then glucagon is released from this, the glycogen in the liver is converted to glucose, and this glucose is released to the blood. And then the blood glucose level increase. So any decrease in the blood glucose level will be taken care by converting the glycogen to glucose from the liver, and it will be released to the blood, so that you will have enough glucose level in the blood, right? So this is the mechanism. Both are negative feedback, right? Both are negative feedback. It's a complete negative feedback system for sugar regulation. So of course, the mechanism with which it happens is not as simple as that. There are so many biochemical reactions that are happening that we are not worried about. We are going to look at this system from an engineering viewpoint. So for that matter, we can think it in this fashion, right? So in order to analyze this, we can actually look at a general concept, what is called the block diagram approach to this type of control systems, right? The control, right? The control system. So before that, I would like to say that I told two things here. One is called a sensor, and another is something which actuates. So the idea is that we have got something which is of our interest. What is the interest? What is the purpose of this this particular regulation? Somebody tell me. What is our interest?
To monitor blood glucose level.
Yeah, so you have to maintain the blood glucose level, right? If you want to maintain something, say constant, what should be your first step? Suppose I want to maintain constant temperature in a room. What should be your first step as an engineer? What should you think about it? Somebody told you, okay, look, I mean, of course, you can buy an air conditioner. That's a different story. But if you want to design by yourself, if you want to maintain a constant temperature in a room, somebody told you to design something, what will be your first step? Any idea?
Measure the temperature.
Measure the temperature, right? You have to basically measure the temperature. So you need some sensors. So you need a temperature sensor. Similarly, the body has its own mechanism of looking at sensing. sub parameters so that if it is going away from the stability, it can actually do a correction mechanism. So there are sensors for that. So here, this is being initiated by the pancreas cell. And once the sensor get that data, that sensor will activate certain things so that the correction will start happening. So sensor will feed this information to something to activate. See, insulin is released from the pancreas. So it's like an actuation system in engineering systems, if you say. Right, so if you will, I'm certain that you will encounter these terms at some point in your courses. So that time you try to relate it to the body mechanisms. So sensors will actuate it so that insulin is released, and then this correction mechanism happens. So in that way, you can view this particular problem. So here, the normal body temperature is basically 36 degrees centigrade, right? This is in Fahrenheit. So I'm going to just say 98. I'm not going to put units. So I'll just say 98. Now my purpose is I want to keep the body temperature to be at 98. So my normal value of the controlled variable is basically my normal body temperature, which has to be 98, right? But will it always be 98? Because we are living in an environment where the temperature can actually fluctuate. So in such scenario, essentially there will always be a disturbance that is happening due to ambient temperature, right? You can be in a very cold country or it can be very hot. You are in a room where there is no air conditioner. So there can be a disturbance, right? So let's assume that these, let's remove 2 and 3 from this picture. Let's assume that only this branch is there. That means this one and this one. So I'll just draw it here. So let me draw it here. So I'm having, so plus, there is 98, your actual one, which is your normal. And then there is a disturbance. And then what you have is your actual. Now what is actual? Actual is nothing but what is your actual body temperature. So normal is what you desire. That means 36 degree or 98 degree. What is there is a disturbance, which can be any value, but combined based on this disturbance and the normal, you will get an actual body temperature. Now, according to this diagram, what can be the actual? Can you guess? Let's forget this. Let's forget this feedback and all those things. Just this part. So, what is actual? Actual is equal to normal. Hello?
Plus the disturbance.
Plus the disturbance, right? It's additive. That's what this plus signs means. So this is a summation. This is a sum. So you are taking this signal, and just add it so that you will get the output, right? Right now we are forgetting this part. So basically you will get normal plus disturbance is equal to actual. So your body temperature will be normal plus disturbance. Suppose the disturbance is 34 degree. That means the ambient temperature is 34. Then what will happen to your actual? What is actual now? It will be
132.
Yeah, 34 plus 98. Right? It will be 34 plus 98. Now, I think it's 132, right? So now the main issue is, so here, this is called open loop. Again, you can relate it when you learn it. Try to remember this so that you will remember when you learn these things in your courses. So this is it's called open loop in the sense that there is no correction mechanism. Whenever disturbance increases, the actual will keep increasing. If this becomes 50, this will become 50 plus 98, right? But that is not actually the case. You know that even if you go to a very hot temperature or a very cold temperature, you can survive up to a certain extent. So there is an optimal temperature with which your body is maintained at 36 degrees centigrade. So who is doing that job? If this is the model of your body temperature maintenance, then it will never happen because actually is equal to normal plus disturbance. It should keep on increasing. When you go to a desert, your temperature will be very large. If you go to some polar regions, it will just come down. Why it is not happening? I mean, to certain extent, of course, when you are in a very cold country, you need the dress, but up to certain optimal range, you are working fine. So there is a correction of negative feedback. So that is what is shown here as a feedback mechanism. So the idea is that I'm going to feedback the actual, some portion of your actual temperature will be fed back to your input side. Right? So now you can see what is the actual control variable. In this diagram, actual is equal to normal plus disturbance plus, in fact, minus. There is a negative here. So minus gain into error. According to this diagram, this is my error. This will be error into gain. So when you have a block diagram like this, the output of this block diagram will be error multiplied by gain. That's what it means. So if my error is a 1 and my gain is 33, it should be 33. Just multiply it, some numbers. So that will be this one. So this is what my formula is. Now what will happen to this particular system? So you can see that some portion of your actual value is being sensed here. That means you are measuring it. There is a sensor here. And it is fed back to your input side, right? So suppose there is no disturbance. Suppose disturbance is 0. Okay, so what will be my output actual?
98.
Why?
Because disturbance is 0.
But then there is error here. In the formula there is error as well. Okay, norm is 98. I agree. Disturbance is 0. Fine. But what happens to this one? So what is this? So error is what? So what is this here? Suppose this is 98. Let's assume that this is 98. So this is also 98 because this is actually tapping this one because this is my desired one, right? So this will be 0. This is 0. This is 0. So this is also 0. Then what is this? 98. See? So if this is 98 and disturbance is 0, the actual will be 98. So that error will be 0 and you can maintain it. But if suppose disturbance becomes a positive value, say 34, what will happen? So when disturbance will become 34, basically this will become 132. Then this guy has to shoot to 132, right? But then I am telling, look, this I don't want that to happen. I can afford to have, say, 99 degree. I can afford to increase it by 1 degree. That I can allow. But I don't want it to be 132. So can you do something? So I will design a feedback mechanism in such a way that even if the disturbance is 34, it will not shoot to 132 like an open loop where there is no negative feedback, but it will try to maintain it at 98. At 99. That's all I want. So what should be my gain then? Then you can see that basically this should be equal to 33 because now you can see this will become 132 minus 98. You do the calculations. You can see that with this minus 33, actually it should be plus 33 because minus is already taken care here. So plus 33, you can actually subtract it and you can find that this will be 99. You do your calculations. I have done it here. You do your calculations and convince yourself that this will be the case. Similarly, if it is minus 34, what will happen? It fluctuates to minus 34. Then what will happen? Your actual, your disturbance is now reduced. So the actual control variable will come down. If this comes down, essentially you have to push it up. So when this comes down, this will also comes down. Because this is a negative quantity, there is a subtraction here so that this will come down so that the actual will be maintained. Right? So if disturbance increases, this is the equation from which you can find out everything. If the disturbance increases, what happens? Your actual will increase. If actual increases, your error will increase. but this term is subtracted from this one to get the actual. So if actual increases, this one will increase proportionally based on G, so that since this is subtracted out, the actual has to come down. Similarly, if the disturbance decreases, actual will decrease. But since there is a subtractant term here, when actual decreases, the error should also decrease, so that this term will become smaller. So that since this is subtracted, the whole term should become higher. That means actual increase. So any change in the actual in either direction is being arrested to certain extent depending on the gain value by the system. And that's how the negative feedback is achieved. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, so this is exactly what is being shown here. So when a body so this is just another example where when the body temperature is very low, hypothalamus is the sensor, it senses it. Then the blood vessels will make sure that the temperature is not radiated out. We will start shivering so that this blood vessels will make sure that the heat is not radiated out so that it is preserved. We will start shivering so that heat will be generated. Similarly, the thyroid will tell the cells to generate more heat so that the body temperature will start increasing. So again, a negative feedback. Similarly, body temperature goes high, the same mechanisms will happen. So how individual mechanisms is achieving it is a different story. It requires a lot of biological background, but generally this is how you can actually view this problem. Now we'll come to the examples of positive feedback. So this positive feedback is again a very interesting stuff. So you can see that I will cover this first part, this action potentials, in the second part of the course. That time I will tell you what is the positive feedback coming over here. So essentially in a human body, there are so many electrical signals being generated. Okay, so the cells communicate each other. How do you see? What do you mean by seeing something? What do you mean by touch sensation? What do you mean by pain? How do you sense smell? Right? So there are so many sensors equipped in your body, like your nose, your ears, your eyes, your skin. All these sensors senses different physiological parameters surrounding you in the environment that you are living, and they are sending some signals to the brain. And you can see that these are basically electrical signals. So if you can imagine, if you can actually see the electrical current passing like a visible light, then you will be like what is shown in this figure. You can actually see that our body will be glowing like hell. You will keep on seeing so many electrical pulses going up and down, I don't know, to and fro the brain. And in brain, there are certain areas reserved for, say, for visualizing, for mathematical processing, for thinking, for seeing. So all these things are being, some part of the brain is being reserved, and these signals will be fed to the respective areas, and then we get the sensation of feeling, sensation of thinking, sensation of taste, and all those things, right? And for these electrical signals to happen, there are positive feedback loops that is happening, which are called Hodgkin cycle, which we will look at some point, right? Another thing is the heart. So you know that heart has to keep on pumping, right? It never stops. If it stops, you die, right? So essentially it has to keep pumping. And who is telling it to pump like this? So heart pumping means it's like a balloon where you have to push. When you suppose you fill the balloon with water and try to push it, the water will come down, come out, right? Similarly, the heart has blood filled in it and it has to push it, right? When it pushes, the blood will go to the circulation and to the lungs, like what I have explained earlier. Now the question is, how does it push? What is actually pushing it? Essentially, the heart muscles have to contract, expand, or it has to reduce the volume or increase the volume so that it can have a pumping action. Now, who tells the muscles to actually do this? So there are some electrical signals being generated inside the heart muscles, which actually causes this particular phenomenon. It keeps on generating some signal, like an oscillator, as I told you. And that requires a positive feedback. So that also we will have a look at it. So these are, now you will clearly understand what is the importance of positive feedback, right? If you don't have positive feedback, you die. Now, Now our aim is to look at this. So we told about the homeostasis, how should be your system should be stable, all those details we have already found explained. Now what you are going to look at is, can we actually look at your homeostasis, or can you actually look at the stability of your human body? In what way we can actually look at your stability of your human body? I mean, is everything going fine? Are you healthy? Do you have any problem? These are the questions that you can ask, right? So when the technology grow, it is actually possible to interface the machines with the human body to actually measure these human physiological parameters, right? So that is what, and essentially it is for stability as well, right? I mean, why do you give treatment to a patient? It's a matter of stability, right? You have to make it's going away from the stability due to disease. You have to keep it right. You have to give medical interventions. It can be surgical interventions. You need a lot of measurements to be taken from the body. And I don't have to explain all these things you have seen in hospitals, and you are exposed to, the public is exposed to all this stuff nowadays, right? You know how does an ICU look like? I mean, from in movies or whatever way you have seen that. So many instruments being connected to the body, right? They're all measurements, physiological measurements. So it requires a lot of biomedical instrumentation. Instrumentation means measurement systems. And it also requires a lot of control. It's not just about measurements. What are you going to do with that measurement? Can I use that measurement to control your body, right? These are the things that you have to ask. So there are different ways of looking at your body by taking a series of measurements from your body, like EEG, ECG, ultrasound, MRI, CT, right? So this particular slide will tell you certain type of measurements. You can see that, as I told you, there are several electrical signals that have been generated in the body. So for example, I told you how we get the sense of vision, sense of touching, and all those things are through electrical signals. And I also told you that heart is pumping because there are certain electrical signals being generated to expand or contract the heart muscles. And that's how heart pumps. Those signals which is doing this job is actually available at the surface to get measured. So you can actually measure those signals that are called ECGs. And the signals that is used to communicate, to get the touch, sense of touch, sense of vision, that manifests as EEG. You can measure it from the brain, right? So there are electromyographs. There are signals electrical signals that can be measured from muscles, right? So these measurements I can use, and there are sounds. So for example, heart sound. You can actually make measurements of heart sounds as well, right? So you can see these type of measurements that can be made from the human body. Similarly, you can have CT scans, ultrasound, MRI, photoacoustics. So a lot of measurements can be done in the human body. But there is a subtle difference between these two slides. Both are actually looking into the body in a non-invasive fashion. That means we are not cutting the body. When you take the measurements, it is not affecting the body in any way, right? But both are doing the same job, looking into the body in a non-invasive fashion. But there is a big difference between these two concepts given in this slide and in the next slide. Somebody tell me, please. Any idea? Hello?
In the second slide, we are getting images. We are actually looking into it.
In the second slide, you are getting images. Okay, it need not always be images. And you can also get images in the first one as well. Yeah, I can make these electrical signals to look like images. That is quite possible. Any other difference between these two? Huh?
In the first one, we are
sorry?
In the first one, we are using non-invasive measures to.
I'm not able to hear you. Can you a little bit clearly, please?
Hello.
Go on.
Yes, in the first one, the instrument is in contact with the skin, whereas in the second one, it's not in contact.
That is not actually true. See, for example, if you look at photoacoustic imaging or ultrasound imaging, for that matter, it is in touch with the skin. Ultrasound, you put a gel and then it touches the skin, right? In MRI, of course not. X-ray CT, no. But in certain imaging modalities, you have to touch it. OCT, yes. So that is not the difference.
In
Any
second, we are using light.
other?
In second, we are using light.
No, here you use everything. You use MRI is not with the light. OCT is with the light, agree. Ultrasound is not light, right? Any other idea?
Sir, I think in the first one, we are receiving signals from inside our body, and in the second one, we are sending signals from outside and receiving them.
Right. So in the first one, we are relying upon the signals being inherently generated from the body. We are not injecting anything. We are just receiving it and try to see whether everything is going good. You look at the ECG, the signal is generated from your heart, right? And then you look at it and see whether it's healthy or not. Similarly, EEG, similarly, the heart sound, everything is being generated from the body. But here, these signals are being injected into the body, and then these signals will interact with your body, and it will be measured. And from that measurement, we have to say if your body is good or not, right? So you are artificially generating signals, and it is injected to the body. It has to interact with the body. You take the measurements. When it comes out, you take the measurements, and then from that measurement, you tell whether you are fine or not, right? So essentially, these are completely different concepts, but there is something which you can actually look at it in a common way. That is what I am going to cover in the next slides. I think I should stop now. So if you have any questions, you can tell, or you can sign off. Yeah.
Sir, why are we not having offline class?
Offline class, I don't know, because there are so many COVID cases, and with this big community, I mean, a lot of students into one room. I don't know whether it's going to be a good thing. So, I mean, people suggested it's up to the lecturer, I mean, instructor, whether you want to take it or not. So I thought, why do you want to? Means the cases are increasing.
Yeah, sir, got it.
Yeah. Any other questions? So if you don't have any questions, you can just you can stop. Yeah.